Hey, welcome into the Saturday Morning Snap Fantasy Football Podcast. We are headed into week 14. Unbelievable to think that we are into the fantasy playoffs. It's been a whirlwind of a season, Scotty. We've been neck and neck the whole year. We've been, super competitive. You and I going head to head in the listener league this week. I will bow down to the Emperor, sir. You absolutely wiped the floor with me as a 4-8 team, putting up a league high 160. Unbelievable week, sir.
Well, I just looked at the Emperor's crystal ball and said, you know what's going to happen this week? Devontae Parker is going to be the WR1 of the entire league. I think everybody saw that coming.
Absolutely went off. We're going to talk about him today. Looking like Randy Moss out there. Just throw it up and I will go get it, is what he was saying.
It was there was a lot of stuff this week that was ridiculous, but I will say there was some stuff that absolutely went in my favor, so it was a lot of fun for me.
Not only did I get my ass handed to me by you, but I also did by Petey. He threw up a cool 153 with Devontae Parker, James White, and Tom Brady combining for about 100 points. Just wasn't my week in a couple leagues this week, I'll tell you.
Anytime you're sewered by a combination of Devontae Parker
White.
And it just like what do you do, right? That's Aaron Rodgers did what Aaron Rodgers does more often than not, and but it was the Devontae Parker where I just couldn't help but laugh because really like him.
Yeah.
Good times.
He was looking good. So we got a good lineup here. It's an important week, arguably the most important week of the year. And if you guys made the playoffs in your leagues, congratulations. It's a long grind. 13 weeks is a lot of attention, a lot of time. But if you've been here with us and it's paid off for you, congratulations. Just a great thing to be into the playoffs, whether you just snuck in, whether you secured your bye. Be proud of yourself. If you don't know yet and you need something magical to happen and you're with us on YouTube, put in the comments what you need to happen tonight. And for me, I'm down 4. I've got Dalvin Cook and the Minnesota defense going up against Tyler Lockett, against my buddy Bob. I desperately need a big Dalvin Cook night to secure a bye. He needs the victory to get into the playoffs. Should be a fun one. I'm excited. I know, Scotty, you're a big Vikings fan. You're hoping that they can pull out a victory tonight and come level with the Green Bay Packers. If they don't, there's a good chance Green Bay might be able to clinch this division.
Yeah, I'm actually in my own little situation against you in our Dynasty League because you are up on me, and it's not a massive lead, but it is a lead that I need both my remaining wide receivers to perform. I'd say at best above average for me to win. Problem is both those wide receivers are Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf, which means for me to beat you, they have to go air raid on my boys, and the secondary has to let them get some real points. So I'm going to be in a really morally ambiguous situation once the clock strikes 8:20 there. So that's what I need. I need Lockett and Metcalf to both have great games, and the Vikings to wipe the floor with Seattle. Not sure how that happens, but we're going to find out.
As I am not going to make the playoffs in that league with Wakefield winning, I am pulling for you. You've had a great season. I am pulling for a big game. Hopefully more on the DK Metcalf side than the Tyler Lockett side, just because I am facing him in another matchup. But it would be nice to see you get that number 1 spot as you've been clawing and chasing your way after it the whole year. So I'm pulling for you.
I appreciate it. That juggernaut known as Minnesota is next in line for me there.
What a disgusting team.
I need everybody. Oh God. When you have Stephon Diggs in your flex because you feel like it, or maybe you bench him and you decide week to week, I have no sympathy for that man.
It's a team where, if he doesn't win, you just shake your head and go, just goes to show you how random fantasy football can be sometimes.
And that's what I am
There you
banking
go.
on.
So if you're on YouTube with us, go ahead and click that subscribe button. We would really, really appreciate you guys. Get into the comments what you need to happen tonight, or tell us if you clinched a spot or not, if you missed out. We're here to, give you some insight, give you some news, but also chat some football, and we want to interact with you guys. So if you're with us, get that comment section going. Scotty will be monitoring it throughout the chat. To my left, you're going to see a list of potential pickups for this week, depending on your needs and your league. We're going to go through those guys, but first we're going to talk about some studs who jumped off the page this week, really stood out, had career games, and we're going to start with the biggest fantasy winner of the week. That would be Mr. James White, 33.7 fantasy points in a half-point scoring system. I'm not going to lie. Game script was a huge factor for James White. The Pats were down. They had to play catch-up the whole game. He was heavily involved in the passing game. 8 receptions on 11 targets for James White, 98 yards and 2 touchdowns to go along with, I believe it was like 50 or 60 yards on the ground. So James White was used heavily because they needed him to be in that role, but he also had a lot of garbage time. If you watch the game, James White streaming himself down the sideline at the end of the game in a meaningless play, picking up point after point after point, just yelling to the heavens, fantasy. It was painful for me because I was playing him in a couple spots. What do you think about him moving forward, though? Sony Michel's still there. Rex Burkhead's getting the ball. James White is involved. Do you chase the points on James White at this point? He's 88% owned. He's probably not going to be available at all. But if he was, would you pick him up, or would you kind of abstain?
I mean, New England's always one of those backfields that if given the chance, like if I have any other options, I usually try to avoid that committee like the plague, because it feels almost every time that playoff fantasy rolls around, we come to this point where, and I've seen so many friends, was the most recent, where they pinned all their hopes on a New England running back, week 1 or week 2 of the fantasy playoffs. And for no reason at all, Belichick just did what Belichick did and decided that, although I think it was James White or whoever had like the 210-yard game the week prior, then they gave him 3 carries the next week. It was insane. It was the fantasy playoffs, and people felt so good going into it that they had this stud after one of the best games you can ever imagine, and they rushed him like 3 times.
Right.
And to me, that just sticks with me, because that never seems to change. It's just the Belichick way of going. He goes with who he wants to in his head. Whoever gets the hot hand early, even if a guy had 200 yards the week before, he doesn't seem to care. So like you said, he's 88% owned. So to me, you're not grabbing him. If you're looking at starting him, I don't know if you can chase the points, in my opinion, on this, because there's just a chance that, say, Sony Michel goes off next week for all the points there, and he's left with 4 carries himself. I hate the New England backfield. I hate the New England Patriots, but I really hate their backfield for fantasy implications. So I'd say this might just be kind of an anomaly. I don't know if I'd chase it myself. Yeah,
that's kind of where I'm at too. It's he's not available, so the fact that you could get him is limited. But even if he was available or you had him on your bench, I don't know if I'm gonna be willing to roll him out. Patriots next week find themselves up against the Chiefs.
Yeah, so not the most intimidating defense in the world.
No, and that's kind of where I think this game could be fairly offensive. The Patriots certainly have the better defense, so you could buy into 2 narratives. 1, it could be a boat race, or 2, the New England defense could step up and shut the Chiefs down a little bit, and the game could be won on the ground for the Pats, which would be Sony Michel and Rex Burkhead most likely. So yeah, I don't know. I think James White was very game script dependent, and I'm not willing to put my fantasy playoffs on the line with him. So I'm gonna not chase the points on this one.
especially most of the points, as you said, came during fantasy garbage time, which
That
if
too.
it's the Patriots, I don't know if you can always count. There's going to be fantasy garbage time with Tom Brady still like whipping the ball to running backs and things. I don't know.
For as good as Tom was fantasy-wise, he was quite bad from a game perspective.
Tom is, you say it year after year, but like Tom does look like a 42-year-old legend, absolute legend, perhaps in decline, because the weapons around him on the offensive side of the ball, I'd say they're almost at an all-time low. But 10 years ago, Tom Brady somehow would have just made this all happen, where he just seems to be getting more and more pissed off every week.
So true.
I liked the quote they did. They talked to him before the bye, and he said, "I'm the saddest 8-0 quarterback in the NFL."
It's so true.
And it's true. It's not him that's leading them to 8-0 right now, or that was leading them to 8
10 and
with the record
2.
Yeah.
Sorry, 10 and what are they?
And well, with last night's loss,
10 and 2. 10 and 2. 10 and 2.
Yeah. And yeah, without that D playing the way they've been playing, I am not convinced that they would be even close to 10 and 2. I mean, that offense has been as anemic as I've ever seen a New England offense be.
Got a pretty soft schedule too. They didn't play an above 500 team from last year until week 9. So, we're starting to see the Pats in some tough matchups. Lamar Jackson made them look pretty bad, and Deshaun Watson did so as well. Devontae Parker, it comes in stud. We already talked about him. 80% owned, 31.4 fantasy points. Looking like I said, a young Randy Moss. 7 of 10 for 159 and 2, and it could have been more, which is crazy to think. He won't be available in your deeper leagues. You can happily start him the next 2 weeks against the Jets and the Giants. My question to you is, Scotty, who would you start Parker over in the next coming weeks? Some tough matchups here. We've got Ravens wide receivers up against the Bills. The Bills defense has been quite solid.
It has been quite solid.
So we've in question we have maybe the tight ends with Mark Andrews as a flex play. Maybe we've got Hollywood Brown to consider there. Odell Beckham Jr. has been quite bad as of late. I mean, this season he's been pretty poor. Would you consider starting Devontae Parker over OBJ?
I would. I actually absolutely would. And I was thinking about this actually as I watched our matchup, you have them in league record. And really, the difference right now to me is Devontae Parker is in basically the perfect fantasy football situation where you've got that lovable drunk pirate Fitzpatrick just running. Like, did you watch him try to spear a cornerback with his helmet? It was hilarious. This guy's like, what is he, almost like 40? Just head down, ran right at him, and the cornerback looked like he was mad that he thought he was trying to instigate hit with his head. Like, that's the guy you want because he has no problem dropping it back. That's how Devontae Parker had that day. Was because he just backs up. He says, well, it's like a 51-49. This is going to work. And he whips it. And if he comes down with it, boom, he made your week as a WR1 or 2 right there. OBJ, like, completely different game scripts. You've got a now injured Mayfield, regardless of whether he is the guy in the backfield or not.
We'll talk about him, yeah.
But also, I mean, I think Landry's the number one there. I really think, just based on the amount of receptions and like they always seem to be looking for him. OBJ's got the name recognition, and we know he's talented as all hell, but Mayfield's not been playing very well. I'd say their run game has actually kind of been their stronger part of their offense the past few weeks, and he seems to go to Landry first.
It's for 2 reasons. I think OBJ is drawing a lot of coverage, sometimes double teams, and that leaves Landry open. But Baker has shown a little bit of a chemistry with Landry, and he just seems to be his fail-safe guy. Just kind of goes to him, and yeah, it's concerning. So Devontae Parker over OBJ is in consideration. What about Keenan Allen? Goes up against the Jacksonville Jaguars secondary.
I don't know if I go that far. And it's tough. It's a tough call. I was watching that Chargers game last night as Hunter Henry decided to be like the lone, black hole on my roster there against you. But Keenan Allen, he is very good.
I agree.
And I always like Phillip Rivers' game script more than Baker Mayfield these days. So I can't. It's tough because Parker looks so good, but that Jacksonville secondary still doesn't scare me. I mean, we talked to death what Tannehill did to them. Well, I thought Winston was going to do to them. He looked pretty bad, but his team picked him up. The pick six and everything by the defense really turned it into a blowout where it wasn't the offense on Tampa that made it so. I'm still not scared of Jacksonville's secondary though. So I would. I'd go Keenan. I'd still go Keenan Allen. He is still crazy talented.
Last one, Tyreek Hill goes up against the Pats next week. They just beat the Raiders 40-9. Tyreek Hill only 5 for 55.
That's a tough one.
All the production for them came on the ground. Pat Mahomes was only 175 and 1 yesterday, 15 of 29. Not the greatest outing for Pat Mahomes.
And who's Miami facing next week again?
Miami plays the Jets next week.
And the Jets were looking good for the past 3 weeks until this past week where they looked terrible.
Yes.
So that's it's interesting because New England was looking dominant, and then last night they got pretty stomped all over.
We can revisit this come start and sit on Sunday, but I'm considering him.
Tyreek would be a hard sit
over OBJ for sure though. I'm going the next 2 weeks. Man, Parker's schedule looks great. Nice to see Deshaun Watson and Aaron Rodgers bounce back after really, really poor Week 12 performances. Ryan Fitzpatrick finds himself in this trio, all scoring 28 fantasy points in a 4-point league. Just nice to see. Fitzpatrick was great last week as well, but nice to see these guys come. I believe Rodgers will have another really good week coming up against Washington. After that, I'm not really looking to play him if I have him going up against Chicago and Minnesota, 15-16. Going to be kind of gross, but not really much to say for these guys, but really, really nice to see out of Watson and Rodgers after really poor Week 12s. Darius Geis, 26.7 fantasy points, really kind of kicked his day off with a 60-yard pickup on the ground, really kind of got him going. He just kept chugging the rest of the day. Finished 10 carries for 129 yards and 2 touchdowns. And when you look at this Washington Redskins team, they want to run the ball. And Bill Callahan and his mantra has been, let's do it on the ground. 236 yards for Peterson and Geis, 3 scores for the duo in a great upset against who did they upset? Washington.
The Redskins?
The Redskins upset the Panthers.
Yes.
So, yeah, great to see them coming off a big win, get it done. Darius Geis is only 50% owned, and we'll talk more about him in the waiver wire segment, but he's going to be the number one waiver wire pickup for a lot of people going into playoff week.
Well, and I mean, as we've discussed on other installments of this long-running fantastic live stream, he really checks all the boxes because 100%. We've talked about the debate between who you're going for, because some people will have keeper implications and will be in dynasty leagues. This guy checks all the boxes. He's a guy that if you grab now when he's shown what everyone was hyped about 2 years ago, if you can, maybe he becomes your keeper for the league because I mean, when Adrian Peterson and Thompson are the other guys in that running back, who the franchise running back is there. AP, love him to death, and he actually put up a great week, which I enjoyed.
Absolutely.
But we all know he is not the future. He will probably Frank Gore out somewhere else or there for another season. But Geis is the man in the backfield. So if he's only taken up in 50% of leagues, there's a chance that you could be snagging him for your future if you have all that fab left and people have been hesitant to grab him. Go get him. Agreed. If you're not in the playoffs and you're not locked, go get him.
Totally agree. Alshon Jeffrey, 24.2 fantasy points. He is 80% owned.
Hey.
Dude saw 16 targets in his return. Him and Nelson Aguilar were pass-catching weapons for Carson Wentz. Carson Wentz, from a game standpoint, game flow standpoint, was pretty bad. He was very, very underwhelming, was good for fantasy, but, man, the Eagles just fell so flat against Miami. And Mark called this game on the live stream. He said, I think this could be a trap game. I wouldn't be surprised. I think I said I wouldn't be surprised if this was like a 24-21 game. He said I wouldn't be surprised if Miami won. I was kind of taken back by that, but great call by Mark.
Yep.
So good to see him have a good game in his comeback. Really limited Zach Ertz. That was a big donut. And then Robert Woods also coming back after his personal issue 2 weeks ago. He sat out. Had a good week 2 weeks ago, and then a good week this last week. 13 receptions on 19 targets. 19 targets, 172 yards. I mean, he didn't get into the end zone, but this is the type of volume that you want to see for Robert Woods. The question I have for you is, will it trend going into the playoffs, in your opinion? He's got Seattle, Dallas, and San Francisco. Seattle and Dallas can be thrown on. San Francisco is going to be a really tough test, especially in Week 16 when your potential fantasy championship is on the line.
Yeah, it was great to see, first of all. And it did remind me of the Rams of last year.
Agreed.
You know, the guys who were just shredding defenses and everyone feared them in the league. This was the type of offense they were running. Mm-hmm. I mean, Gurley, I'm sure you were happy about. Gurley looked vintage. But it all came together to me. Like that was part of what, like, they needed a good run game last year to be the team they were, and they also, I thought, needed to have a guy like Woods getting 15 targets a game, and that opened it up for Kupp and Cooks and the rest of them. So that it was exciting to see them get back. It was I mean, let's be real. It was against the 32nd passing defense in the NFL. You know, and everyone's like, "Oh, the Rams are back." It's like, well, I mean, you know, but it was great to see. I do expect at least the trend with Woods to continue. Outside of San Fran there, you know, the defenses are good. Dallas has a decent defense. Seattle is quite good, but they're not, you know, Seattle is not the Legion of Boom anymore. It's hard to, like, in my head, when I see a team's up against Seattle, there's still that part of my brain that instinctively goes, oh, we're not doing that.
Right.
But I have to, like, walk it back now. Yeah. I have to say, but really, like, what are my other options? Because Seattle is not the Seattle I grew up with. Let's put it that way.
Right.
So I do see this trend continuing. I don't know what happened about why he needed to take personal time off, but since he was gone for that week, the dude has come back, you know, with a vengeance.
Strong.
And the thing is, he's had all these passes at him, and he has not let anybody down. He has said clearly, throw me the ball. And he has made great things happen. So I think this trend will continue. I would be leery, as you said, of anybody going up against that San Francisco secondary. But as far as Dallas and Seattle, I'm rolling them out there. I have no fear against Seattle and Dallas.
Yeah, I'm good for the next 2 weeks if I have them, and San Francisco will cross that bridge when we get there.
Yeah,
they could have things locked up, and they could be playing soft. Like you just never know, right?
Yep.
So injuries. We're going to move on to a little bit of an injury segment. If you are tuning in and you are, 40 minutes away from game time here, Adam Thielen is ruled out for tonight's game against the Seattle Seahawks with a hamstring injury. He was testing it out earlier in the week, as Mark reported. Did not trend well, did not look well, so he will be out. So here's the thing. Mark this morning in the Listener League, in a desperation attempt to make the playoffs. Basically, if he loses, I'm in the playoffs. If he wins, he's in the playoff to represent the podcast in our Listener League. He dropped Adam Thielen this morning for Johnson. How do you say it? Olabisi?
Olabisi? Is it Olabisi?
Yes, Olabisi Johnson.
I worked with an Olabisi.
Do you really?
If that's the same. I did, yes.
That's even as a teacher reading tons of attendance, I've never come across that name.
We just called him BC, so I only said his full name twice, but it was all of BC.
So, do you pick, if you had Thielen in there, do you pick up Johnson in a last-ditch effort, or if it's like a flex play, would you rather roll out Rudolph? Because Rudolph will be available.
Yeah, well, I've been pumping the tires on Rudolph, and I still, 20, 25, 30 minutes will tell if my pumping the tires on Rudolph has been worth it. But if you flexed him the past, 5 weeks, you're probably happy. You're okay with, he's not gonna win you your week, but if he can keep this touchdown streak going, I mean, for a tight end flex, it's tough.
What we've seen the last
tough.
couple weeks is at the tight end position, if you've even gotten into the end zone as a tight end, you're a top 12 option.
Oh, easily. I mean, a guy like Jared Cook or somebody, like week to week, what usually makes him so valuable is he's a real threat to get that one touchdown.
Mm-hmm.
That's after that, it's like maybe, if he got 23 yards, that's cool. But the touchdown is what gets it. Rudolph to me has become one of those guys. Because that's the thing. Yeah, we know Thielen's out. And as you and I discussed on the pod either last week or the week before that, if you want to look at it this way, if Thielen is out, it means that when Cousins doing his progressions, he's going to be looking at Rudolph sooner than if he had Thielen and Diggs going. Because let me tell you, if you're talking like Treadwell or somebody or Rudy, at least in my opinion, you're going to Rudy 9 out of 10 times. I love my Vikes. That guy is terrible at football.
Yeah, we'll see how this one shakes out. I hope it's a good one, like we said.
I'm expecting a good one. Wilson is really hard at home, so
you got the 12th man there. It'll be tough.
The 12th
That's
man
right.
there. Yes, they do.
If you watch the Browns and Steelers rematch, you saw Baker Mayfield left the game with seconds remaining in the first half. He basically, on the follow through, I guess, rattled his hand off of Bud Dupree's helmet, and it appeared that he, potentially injured himself for long term, almost like Drew Brees and Big Ben did. He returned in the second half, and he looked decent. They didn't come back and get the win. However, they looked decent. And Mayfield seemed to be unaffected by it. So we'll monitor that situation. And the reason why I say we'll monitor it is because Baker Mayfield might be a streaming play the next 2 weeks with the Bengals and Cardinals on the schedule. So just keeping that in mind, I really kind of like Baker Mayfield as a streamer, potentially. But I didn't really know what to make of the injury, but it was nice to see that his x-rays came back negative.
Yeah, I mean, it looked like a classic stinger, if there was one. Like, it did look similar to what happened with Drew Brees. But at the same time, I was watching it as it happened. And anytime, I don't know if you saw the replay, but anytime those quarterbacks go all the way through and it clips the helmet, I'm sure something could break. But if it came back negative, you all like somebody smacking a finger against a helmet would at least have to come out because it would be numb, and it's I feel like there's a version of getting winded basically where it feels really bad, but then after like an hour or two, maybe it's actually not so bad. So I think he'll be fine. And
it's totally that
I do agree that schedule. Yeah, I agree though that schedule is pretty great after we witnessed what the Rams did to that Arizona secondary. If there was a matchup to target, even though if it's 2 weeks out, if Mayfield can just put things together against that secondary, it could be a pretty explosive day with those passing weapons.
You would certainly like to think so, and
you would hope so at this point. Like, I don't know, I don't put much faith in Mayfield, but you at least for the schedule and the matchup, what more can you ask for really than the Bengals and that secondary with Cardinals?
Not a whole lot, my man. That's a good point. Just as we're talking about the Browns, I wanted to touch on something. I've watched the trend for Nick Chubb the last couple weeks. We've seen a little bit of a decline in his fantasy output, and he has been great still. I'm not saying that he hasn't been, but he was otherworldly for the first half of the fantasy season. He was basically a lock for a running back 1 performance, maybe even top 5 or RB1 overall. Since Kareem Hunt has come back, we've seen a lot of his workload be stolen away. And I didn't really think that this would happen, but it's very apparent that there is a changing of the guard in Cleveland, a little bit more of a 2-back set, more than I had anticipated. And these stats come from Nate Hamilton. If you haven't followed him on Twitter, it's @Dominate. He's a good follow, solid fantasy analyst. But he said that since Kareem Hunt returned, there's only a 1.3 point difference in PPR leagues between the 2 backs. Now, the way that they've been used has been has been different. Chubb is out touching Hunt on the ground 84-25. However, Hunt is out touching Chubb through the air 20-6. Fantasy points per touch. Now, there's a lot more touch for Chubb, but fantasy points per touch is 1.25 for Kareem Hunt and 0.64 for Nick Chubb. Kareem Hunt's been more efficient, and he's been performing similarly in terms of fantasy points. So I would say that if you are a Chubb owner, you need to know that your ceiling is capped. You still have to roll him out because he's been that guy for you all year, but you have to temper your expectations just a little bit moving forward. And I thought those were some interesting stats to kind of share with the community here.
No, I do think those are interesting. And, I mean, that was kind of the interesting thing when they did take the risk. Well, I mean, it wasn't much risk because it shouldn't cost
they got
them
him for nothing,
anything.
right?
They got him for nothing. But, I mean, you think about the name Kareem Hunt, and you just go back in time a few years, and he was the running back to own in fantasy football. So, yeah, I was interested to see how they're going to integrate him in when he finally was back from suspension. But, I mean, we know, like you say, that it really does cap the ceiling because as time progresses, I think you could see the ceiling for Kareem Hunt actually just keeps going up because he's the type of guy who, if he sees a bit of daylight, it only takes one. We've seen it too many times to not know that if Kareem Hunt gets a seam, he could be gone. Chubb is he is a physical specimen. That guy can run over three guys. But if you want to talk about a guy who, with one touch, could change your whole week, it's Kareem Hunt, probably. Right. So it's interesting, though, like you say, when you line those guys up, it's really good for football. Mm-hmm. And that's why, like, you think the Browns would have a better record at this point, but whatever.
So much talent, man.
Because you line up a perfect bulldozer and a perfect agility back in a 1-2 punch, and these guys should be doing great, even without OBJ and Jarvis Landry in the fold, and Kittle, and
Njoku.
Joku, but anyway, I just think the Browns should be better at football.
It's to me, it's a Freddie Kitchens problem. He's got to go. He's just not ready to be a head coach, and this is where you insert the Kevin Hart. He wasn't ready.
Well, you have that much talent. You know what? It's kind of like the Babcock situation with the Leafs. You surround them with that much talent. If they can't win, then got to find somebody who can make it happen.
Yeah. Sometimes it's just a little bit of freshness, different perspective is all you need. Greg Olsen, Panthers tight end, took a brutal hit in Sunday's contest against the Redskins. Man, he's being out looked at for a concussion. He was great in the game, off to a good start, caught all 3 passes for 22 yards, was on track for a decent, serviceable game as a tight end option. And as of now, I think that I would be running to the wire. If Greg Olsen was my only tight end option for the playoffs, I would be running out and getting one of the guys that we're going to talk about in the next segment for the waiver wire ad. So you'll see them out here, Mike Gesicki or Tyler Higbee. I think you need to make a play for those guys if Greg Olsen is your only tight end.
Oh, I agree, especially with a guy at that age. The guy I was watching the game, that was just a brutal hit. I thought he might be dead. Oh, it's just, and at a guy at that age, you have to imagine the family implications, the real world implications. Like, you're at the tail end of your career.
Is it worth it?
Is it worth it?
Right.
Because that guy was out. It's you hate to see it. I love watching Greg Olsen play. You hate to see a guy that unconscious.
Yeah, he's great, and to go limp like that, especially at his age, like you're saying,
completely limp. It was very, very hard to watch him just go out.
And to be completely honest, it was a brutal hit, but I don't think it was illegal.
I don't think it was a dirty hit. I think it was part of football. And like I say, just kind of the whole situation of it all, knowing Greg Olsen, is probably in his last 2 years. I looked at the friend I was watching the game with, and I just said that's got to be it for Greg Olsen.
Yeah.
I know he's an Iron Man, but at a certain point, you just have to say this is not worth it. And his eyes rolled back. He went out, and I just thought, dude, that's it.
Stop. The booth will be waiting for you. Jason Witten's spot is nice and cold as of right now. Last one, injury, Darrell Williams.
YouTube viewer, Danny S. right now. You got to feel. He started Coleman this week over Geis. I think we just got to pour one out really quickly on that decision for him because a lot of people were there that last week.
I may have told him to do that.
Oh,
Danny, I'm sorry.
yeah.
If it makes you feel any better, I went down with the Tevin Coleman ship. I played him in 3 leagues, and yeah, we'll just leave that one there. Speaking about that, there's got to be something that was not disclosed in an injury report, or Tevin Coleman wasn't healthy. It didn't make sense for him to only touch the ball 5 times. It's I don't understand it.
Oh,
I sincerely hope something comes out this week
me.
for me to get some clarity and some closure, because it just didn't make sense as to why Raheem Mostert just kept getting the ball. I don't know.
Yeah, there was just no rhyme or reason to not get Coleman involved, which is, I can only imagine the frustration that
it was basically like the Peyton Barber Ronald Jones situation. You're like, why is Ronald Jones not getting the ball?
Then you can explain it, because as I was able to find through some sleuthing, it was a missed blitz pickup that is the reason that Ronald Jones Jr.'s disappeared after putting up a 0.9 on the week for fantasy.
So you're telling me that Bruce Arians benched this man in the first quarter after not picking up a blitz block?
Yes, in the post-game interview, and he was quite candid, saying, "Yeah, he missed a block. He missed a blitz pickup. So that's how it goes. He's out of the game." Keep that in mind when you're trying to figure out who of that backfield is.
That's like me sitting one of my basketball players for the whole game because they didn't box out. Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty much.
Last one here. Darrell Williams went out with a hamstring. Damian Williams did not play, so it was basically the LaShawn McCoy and Darwin Thompson backfield. Is it Darwin Thompson's season? Is he coming back?
Oh, another really fun team to try to bet on the running backs. I do think that as long as LaShawn McCoy is in there, I do always think he's the greatest threat to pick up at least red zone touches for, which to me, always kind of caps the potential a little bit when you've got a veteran like McCoy, who I do feel they go to in the time where they need to score. That being said, I mean, that offense, man, Kansas City, as we discussed when we were talking a bit about Tyreek Hill, they've been doing a lot of their damage on the ground. So it could possibly be Darwin Thompson's season. So if you got a roster spot, maybe you don't have many glaring needs right now, which good for you.
Oh, yeah.
Well done. I do think this could be a guy that maybe you go grab, because if he trends the right way, it could be just great to have sitting there waiting for the playoffs.
You ain't wrong. You ain't wrong, my friend. Okay, here we go. Main segment. We've got 20 minutes until game time. Let's see if we can get through these guys before kickoff. Darius Geis, Washington Redskins running back, only 50% owned. I would assume that he'd be the number one waiver wire ad for most people this week. Scotty, let's just get straight to the bare bones here. We've already talked about him, the situation, the scheme for Bill Callahan. If you missed it, go back. How much you bidding on Darius Geis if he's available?
I mean, this is it. This is the show. This is playoffs. If you're bidding, I mean, I've never said this before, but I could be going 50. I could be going 60. I mean, it's playoffs. It's week 1 of the playoffs. I don't know any format that is not you win or you go home.
Right.
If you're locked into a bye week, that's cool because you earned it. So good for you. But Darius Geis is the young, highly drafted running back of Washington. He's the future. He's the franchise. If you get him, odds are they're going to continue pushing him the rest of the season, because we know Adrian Peterson is not the way that Washington wants to go in the future, and Thompson will always just kind of be the receiving back. So out of this entire list of guys, I was saying, whether you're in Dynasty, Keeper, or just Redraft League, out of the long term, even if that's just the next 3 weeks, return on investment for your fab, I'm going 50. I'm going 60. Sometimes maybe I'm going 100%.
Cool.
There's really no reason. I always talk about this. Conserving capital is great, because week to week there's always that guy that looks like the guy to get. But this guy could be a legit starter, a starting running back with his whole career ahead of him. The Redskins aren't going anywhere near the playoffs. You got to think the coaching staff is saying, all right, he's healthy. Let's see what the kid's got. Like, what are you going to do? Run Adrian Peterson a bunch more to like send him off to another team or retirement? Like, what's the point?
What's the point?
Might as well see if Geis is who we thought he was. So I'd say go all in on him if you need a running back, or you want the option come the playoffs. Maybe you got like 2 running backs that you're like, one of them I'm not really sure about. Let's see how Geis does this week. I'd go all in for him.
Third worst against the fantasy running back is the Carolina Panthers. Fourth worst against the fantasy running back is the Green Bay Packers. So he plays next week in week 1 of the fantasy playoffs. So yeah, I'm with you. Like at this point, I'm going to reserve a little bit of my cash for, picking up defenses or kickers or streaming quarterbacks if that's my prerogative. But for a guy like Geis, who could have a week-winning performance again against a really soft run defense, why not?
Yep.
Why not?
Well, I mean, and that's the thing. If he's available, I
only 50%.
I don't have. And that's it. It doesn't amaze me, but it's always interesting because yes, we play in some very deep leagues. A lot of them that have fantasy or dynasty implications. Right. He hasn't been available in any of my leagues for weeks, so that's what I'm saying. If he is available in your league and it's playoff time coming, and you have a legitimate shot at getting him, I mean, that's pretty exciting. That would be
if you play in a league with keepers for next year, and Darius Geis is available, just spend it. Just get it all.
Get him.
Yeah.
No matter what happens, you picked up yourself a keeper because the dude is talented, and now that he's looking healthy, Mark has him in our league. I'm jealous. I've got Rashad Penny.
That's not trending too poor either. Tonight is a really big night for you as a Rashad Penny owner.
That's what's hard about it.
I know.
I have a lot of vested interest in the other side of the ball. Yeah. But your team first. Go Vikes, go.
Go Vikes, go. You can't be a fantasy fan over a NFL fan.
Never.
Raheem Mostert jumped out as a big ad this week for a lot of people. We're going to talk about, why we would not spend some fab on him. First of all, what's going on with Tevin Coleman? We need to figure that out. The other piece to this puzzle is, yes, Raheem Mostert was used tons his first 100-yard game as an NFL player. We're also forgetting that Matt Breida was not in the lineup. So no Matt Breida, limited Tevin Coleman. It only makes sense that Raheem Mostert went ham. Does this continue moving forward? And my thing will be no. If Breida comes back, Breida's going to get the work over Mostert. If we find out that something's wrong with Tevin Coleman, he had like a pregame injury or it wasn't disclosed on the report, like it just doesn't make sense for him not to get the ball. So I'm thinking that something was going on there. If Tevin Coleman and Matt Breida come back healthy, involved, I don't see any point of spending a lot of money on Raheem Mostert. If you are a Tevin Coleman owner and you want to sort of shore that spot up, okay, you can handcuff him. But I still don't love it.
No, this is one of those guys that it always kind of feels like you're trying to chase the fantasy points. Like, sure, he had a blow up week, and it was really great for anyone who did. Of the 14% of people that owned him, the 1% that rolled him out, good for them. But you missed it. Like, this could just be one of those weeks where it happened. That's why somebody more like Darius Geis, that excites me, right? Where it's more like this. You know what? Easy says it very well. San Francisco equals running back roulette, vomiting emoji. You're chasing the points. There's so many factors. Who's in? Who's healthy? Who's got the hot hand? Like there's so much talent back there. The odds of Raheem like having this type of week where you're really going to be kicking yourself that you didn't grab him, I think it's low. I think it's just it's the day after, and people are like, "Oh, I could have got him. Why didn't I start him?" There's a reason. Right. There's a reason that he was owned in 14%. Right. It wasn't by mistake. Right. You can't kick yourself afterwards, and don't go. I wouldn't go chasing it. Like you said, if there was a handcuff situation, you want to feel more confident in your roster. Sure, but I don't forecast that type of performance happening again anytime soon.
And if it comes out that Coleman was indeed healthy and he just like literally lost the work to Mostert early in the game, that's fine. Matt Breida is going to be coming back. He is, with that ankle injury, he is nearing a return. It could be next week, it could be this week or next week. Tevin Coleman continues to be, an RB2/3 flex play for me. But if he was healthy and lost the work to Mostert, you have to know that by plugging him in, he has a 0-point floor. Like, this very well could happen again if he was healthy and just lost the workload.
Oh, it's terrifying.
Yeah.
Especially at this time where it's win or go home. You're going to have to make that decision. You're going to have to live potentially with the ramifications the entire offseason. So
fab bit on Mostert. I'm actually just staying away from him. This has like a landmine quality to him, and I'm not interested in having him on my team. Even as a stash, I'm okay with somebody else picking him up and plugging him in.
Yeah, I agree. I think the temptation there to make a last minute ditch roster change that could, like I say, just destroy your entire campaign. That's scary. So let's hope you don't need to get somebody that, potentially devastating to your own roster.
Nice to see some tight ends on the board and guys that I am a little bit excited for in the last couple weeks. Biggest one is Mike Gesicki, 19% owned. His snap percentage is the thing that I've been watching over the last 2 weeks. Last week, 86%. This week, 90% of snaps. To your point, we talked off air, he's on the field more, just leading to more opportunity. He is a good pass and run blocker, but he's being involved in the offense just a little bit more, mostly in the red zone. And we've talked about tight ends. If you can secure a touchdown, you are a top 12 option. The next 3 weeks, one of the most soft schedules in the league against the tight end, Jets, Giants, Bengals. I'm fired up about this guy, especially in a keeper league. What would you bid on Mike Gesicki in redraft and in keeper?
He's interesting. He was drafted he was actually a very high draft pick for Miami, and
Penn State alum.
Freak. And once again, it comes down to need. If you, we know that the tight end position is very weak. It's rough for pretty much everybody out there. So I expect some competition. He is touchdown dependent at this point, I'd say, but almost every tight end is really not named Kelsey. So I'd say in Dynasty, I'd bump it a little higher because he checks a lot of the boxes where if things work out next year, depending who the quarterback will be there, he could really grow into he's a big man. Right. He has a great frame to be a touchdown catching tight end. Near the end of the season, I'm of the same mindset. Dynasty, I'm going higher in fab, potentially I go as high as maybe a 30-35%. I don't think he's going to, I don't lock him in as like an absolute must add if you have other uses for the fab, but especially if you don't have any glaring holes, he is a really interesting specimen that could really turn into just a reliable touchdown machine. There's a lot of factors. Miami's going to have a lot of change in the offseason. So, if you can grab him and then you can roll with that, see who ends up being the quarterback, what's going to happen there. There are worse guys, though, to throw on your roster and say, let's see what happens in the offseason than a guy this big, this skilled, who is drafted this high.
Right.
For redraft, great schedule. Right? If he keeps the streak up, I'd go 30% as well.
Yeah, I'm spending up. In leagues that I have Zach Ertz and leagues that I have Austin Hooper, I feel like I have no other choice but to make moves, and I've been relying on Ryan Griffin. The flames have been put out on him, and I just look to a guy like Gesicki who has a very, very nice playoff schedule. Jets, Giants, Bengals one more time. I'm looking to spend up, especially in a keeper league. I'll probably spend 40 to 50% of my budget to try to get him. In redraft, I like that 25 to 30% range down to the nitty gritty. It's really nice to see a guy be on the field on 90% of snaps and also be targeted 7 times in a position where 7 targets is going to be a top 6 to 10 finish no matter what, touchdown or not. So the fact that he got a touchdown and got in the end zone was great. I'm really fired up about Gesicki. So spend up for him, get him. Austin Hooper did practice today. He's resuming practice. Whether that leads to him playing or not, we don't know. Zach Ertz was limited in his play. Dallas Goedert was the better play. Dallas Goedert is more owned than Gesicki, so I would go out and try to make the play for Gesicki. I like him over Goddard moving forward. Ertz has been disappointing.
Yeah, I don't think anybody's arguing that point. Boy, Jesus, you drafted him really high.
Yeah.
RIP on that season.
So sad.
We have a YouTube question from Danny S. there, and I feel like we owe him a little bit. So sorry. He's wondering, does Sony have any promise long term here?
Long term as in like this season, or long term as in like future seasons?
Unless he updates the question right now, the question is whether Sony has any promise. What's your thought on Sony? Let's say for this season, and kind of how you see things shaking out as New England continues to age.
Yeah, man. I just think he got game scripted out. He only touched the ball 10 times, 45 yards, 4.5 carries, nothing bad, but the New England just couldn't afford to run the ball. They had to do it through the air. And that's where James White kind of inserted himself into the role. Now, the schedule is quite beautiful for him the next couple weeks. I will update. He just cares about these next 3 weeks. KC, Cincinnati, Buffalo. KC has a soft defense. Cincinnati's horrendous. KC is actually the worst against the fantasy running back in the league. Cincinnati's sixth worst, I should say. And then Buffalo's middle of the pack at 15. Buffalo's secondary is amazing. Tre'Davious White is an absolute shutdown machine. So they could very well take away their top wide receiver, whether that's Edelman, whether they decide to shut down like N'Keal Harry or like another outside threat. But I really, really like Sony to have good games. If he can't have good games against KC and Cincinnati, I don't really put much faith into him being relevant in Week 16. So, if he can't be relevant against KC, I don't really know where the spot is. You're going up against a defense that's soft and the worst against the fantasy running back. So that's kind of the way that I see it. I would roll him, and I think that you can keep your eye out for him on Wednesday morning, because I feel like he might be dropped in some leagues. Sony Michel.
Could happen. All right. Solid take. We have one more query coming at us from Carlos
What's up,
Lara.
Carlos?
Thank you for hanging with us. Do we think that Dalvin Cook can get him 31.6 points tonight to win him the game and make it to the championship game? 31.6 against that Seattle defense with Clowney out front. It's a big ask. What do you think?
Man, that's I desperately need a big Dalvin Cook game. He's done it before. He can do it again. To do it against Seattle, look, I know Jadeveon Clowney is a monster. However, he's only one side of the line. He can't be everywhere. I think that the Minnesota Vikings are good enough to run the ball on the Seattle Seahawks. So I'm going to put some stock into Dalvin. He's going to have to do it with touchdown upside. The yardage has been there, but to get 31, he's yet to get into the 30s at all this season. And for him to do that, he's going to need probably 2 to 3 scores.
Well, I love that answer. I wouldn't mind watching Dalvin Cook just steamroll that Seattle D line.
For a guy that's been like
thanks for the
for a guy that's been a top 3 running back, I think it's
hit that subscribe button.
I think it's definitely doable. I'm pulling for you. And if you like the answer, hit that like, hit that subscribe. We appreciate you.
Absolutely. Love to get those kind of last minute pregame questions 5 minutes before the snap.
Have some faith in Dalvin. Absolutely. Have some faith. He's a stud for a reason. Another tight end that I like, only 11% owned, Los Angeles Rams tight end Tyler Higbee. Now, it's important to note that Gerald Everett was out this last game, and therefore Higbee got a lot of volume. Higbee was also up against the worst passing defense in the league in the Arizona Cardinals. So him, Kupp, and Woods were just left abandoned out there for Jared Goff to kind of do whatever he wanted. if Gerald Everett is out potentially again, they have a good matchup against Seattle, who's 4th worst against the tight end. And then the next week against Dallas, who's the 8th worst in the tight end. So they're playing some bottom third defenses against the tight end the next 2 weeks. And the Rams are picking up a little bit of steam. Todd Gurley's looking like old Todd Gurley here. And Jared Goff, not too bad. So if Everett is out, I like Higbee. I really, really do.
Yeah, no, that was a lot of fun for everyone involved. I think, who aren't Cardinals fans, all 5 of you. I'm very sorry. Well, I guess you started Murray. That wasn't fun for you.
Yeah. Man, it was just a bad week for me.
That was
not gonna lie.
A lot of weird stuff happened, but I do think a lot of people enjoyed watching kind of a vintage Rams offensive beatdown. And Goff looked terrific. He looked like the $110 million man. Time will tell if that was just that 32nd ranked secondary of the Cardinals, or if they're starting to get things going the right way. Like you said, Gurley looked terrific, and he was easily the best. He was certainly the best running back out there on either side. It looked like it was last year, and that was exciting. So it'll be good to see if Goff's a legitimate fantasy option again. And if he is, Tyler Higbee, that's an exciting guy right there.
Pro tip here, I would order them Gesicki Higbee. I would make 2 bids here. The first one would be for Gesicki. We said anywhere from 20 to 30%, depending on your budget. Put him as your first priority, and then put a secondary bid in for Higbee. And I would probably spend somewhere, 15 to 20% on Higbee. If you're desperate at tight end, if you're in that situation like I am with Hooper and Ertz underperforming, go in and make 2 waivers. So if you miss out on Gesicki, you got a secondary bid for Higbee. That's the way you should play it. Drop the same player in both instances, so that if Gesicki goes through first and you actually get him, that claim for Higbee will be canceled. You don't want to win both, spend 50% of your fab, and end up with 2 tight ends that you don't need. So my advice would be put in the same guy to drop, and that way you should get one of them.
Yeah, I love that strategy. That's I like to use that a lot. Is if you've got guys that are basically in kind of A/B situations, just make sure you don't come out with nothing. So pick your favorite, list them as number 1, go number 2, and then when you get that waiver fail, waiver accepted.
That's right.
Yeah, you're still happy.
Darwin Thompson is an interesting spot here. KC running back, he was one of the biggest names in the offseason, preseason, I should say. He's only 5% owned, as he should be. He was 5 for 44 and 1 after Williams went out. He only touched the ball 8 times this year and finally got his time. If the Williams brothers, and I'll call them brothers and not brothers, but I'll call them that, miss time going forward, it's going to be Shady and Darwin Thompson moving forward. However, they play the Pats next week. Should we buy into Darwin Thompson finally, or is it time to just say, you know what, it is what it is, I'm going to let it go, I'm going to temper expectations against the Pats?
For Darwin, the main thing is I don't expect New England to be, good on them. They looked great. They had a great game plan and stuck to it. I was saying when it came to Darwin, he's an interesting player. I wouldn't want to be relying on him. And if you're, if you're in a situation where you need a running back for next week, I mean, if Geis is available, that's your man.
That's your man, yeah.
That being said, if you have an extra roster spot, you've got some fab kicking around, you don't have any glaring holes, and you're thinking it'd be a nice option maybe to have, the following week if things work out. Mm-hmm. I'd throw in a bit on him to see, right? But I'm not burning my fab budget in case I have needs that crop up with injuries or something, because they happen in the playoffs, in the fantasy playoffs. I'm not going very high on him because I do think McCoy's the veteran there. He seems to get most of the
Andy Reid's favorite.
Red zone. Exactly. You can tell who the favorite is because he gets the red zone looks. Like Andy Reid trusts him and he puts it in his hands when they're close to the end zone.
100%.
And when you're rolling the dice in the fantasy world with the running backs, that's kryptonite. When you've got a guy they're going to give the looks to in the red zone.
So true. Who would you rather put Fab on if you played in, like, let's say you played in like a 14, 16 team league and Mostert and Thompson are both there? Who would you order first, and how much would you be willing to spend? Would it be Mostert first still? I mean, I think that's where it'd have to trend, even though I said I wouldn't be spending Fab on him. I think in a desperation play, I would rather go
in a pure
Mostert.
desperation play, I guess you chase the points, right?
Right.
So yeah, I guess you'd go Mostert then Thompson.
Because you are right. Like, Darwin Thompson is going to be second fiddle to LaShawn McCoy. It's been that way the whole season. There's nothing.
Yeah, there's no way that
changes
changes now.
Right.
Yeah, there's a clear-cut favorite of the coach,
right.
and that doesn't just change overnight.
Right.
And then once there's injuries and everybody comes, like, I don't see this. The situation could go to him being irrelevant very, very quickly. And Raheem, I mean, as we discussed, but at least you're chasing points at that point. At least there was something to maybe make the coach think, wow, he really, you know what, look what he did. Like, maybe we should give him the ball more. There's actually a chance of that happening. So
I agree. Yeah, it's Darwin Thompson, unless you play super, super deep league or you really buy into the hype again and want him to keep him for next year, fine. But it's going to be like a couple of percent, like a handful of percentage for me, and then that's kind of it.
Yeah, I agree.
You probably expect Cole Beasley to be higher on this list, higher on our priority. We have reason to believe that he is a mirage. And Scott, I'm going to give you all the credit in the world, man. Last week when we did this, you were like, look, a guy we haven't listed on the screen, but I'm going to bring up is Cole Beasley. I think that you can stream him this week. Even if it is the Thursday game, I think he could be quite relevant. And the dude was great, 6 of 7 for 110 and a touchdown. A lot of people, if they played Cole Beasley early, they were super happy. They jumped out to big leads, and if they missed out, they regretted it. My question is, what's the temperature moving forward for Cole Beasley? Because on the sleeper platform, he already has like 20,000 ads. They got Baltimore, Pittsburgh, and New England the last 3 weeks.
Yeah, I've kind of been actually pushing Cole Beasley, on people a decent amount of the season, because he does seem to just pop up, and no kind of journeyman flex guy pops up that often in conversation in fantasy land without him doing things week in and week out that make you think maybe. That being said, you just listed the reason why maybe you've missed it already, because at least two of those three defenses are elite, and one of those defenses are not, they're not soft. If you really need a flex play, I would still chase him. I'll say that, because he has proven that even in matchups sometimes that we didn't think were great, he still goes out there and at least puts up respectable flex numbers. So I do think, once again, you might be chasing points here, because I wouldn't want to start a guy, kind of his ranking against those defenses if I can avoid it. But if you have no other option and he's available, then go for him, because he just proved any given week he can be a real flex option in this league.
It's crazy to think. I mean, his schedule is not great. These defenses are fantastic. Cole Beasley's been the safety valve. He's been somewhat matchup proof. This was his highest outing of the year by actually the last 2 weeks have been his highest outings of the year, 16.6 and 20 points even. Before that, his high was 11.6. But really, when you look at his usage, it's been fairly consistent. If you're in a PPR league, he's getting 6-7 receptions a week. So he provides you a nice floor, but the ceiling is going to be, I think, capped against Baltimore, Pittsburgh, and New England. So if you the
one thing I will say, and you did already actually mention it, that I do think fights in his favor is he is the safety valve, and when they face elite defenses, that usually means a lot of pressure on the quarterback.
Right.
So that they may be looking their safety valve more than they normally would be. I just think that elite defenses usually have secondaries that can corral him after 6 yards after a catch, instead of letting him break it out for 45. So that's why he is this enigma. He's very interesting. He's an interesting prospect, and he could have a good, strong 3 weeks, but he also could have kind of a disastrous 3 weeks. So he is a risk.
yeah, I think the way that you have to view Cole Beasley is like, one, don't chase the points because that was his best outing of the year. And really, he hasn't gone over 100 yards and a touchdown once. So, to get the volume is great. To get the touchdown on top of it, we haven't seen that before. And if you just need a handful of points and a pretty safe floor, I think Cole Beasley is a good play, especially in a full PPR league. But if you need an upside play, like you're down in a matchup and you need a big game, Cole Beasley, I just think, doesn't have the ceiling that other guys potentially have. So if you need the ceiling play, I don't think Cole Beasley's your guy.
No, I agree with that. Stephon Diggs just ran the ball insanely.
Yes.
Nice little 30-yard pickup for Stephon Diggs off the right side. It was the cutback was filthy.
First and goal. Let's see if Dalvin Cook can punch this baby in.
Let's see if Carlos can. Maybe we can get Carlos a couple fantasy points before we go off here.
Come on, Carlos. Come on, baby.
Carlos. Oh, he's lining up. They're ready to.
I need to open my DAZN real quick.
Yep.
That is one of the beautiful things about living in Canada.
And there's a touchdown for Dalvin Cook.
Let's go, baby. Carlos. That's one.
Carlos, you're off to a good start, buddy.
Let's go. Well, listen, I don't want to keep you any longer. I want you to go and enjoy this beautiful Minnesota Vikings potential win. Dalvin Cook, let's go big. DK Metcalf, let's go big. Tyler Lockett, let's just limit you a little bit. Maybe no touchdowns, 100 yards. I can live with that. But let's just let's see if the Vikings can pull this one out. I'm actually kind of rooting. I know that I would like to see them lose for the Green Bay sake, but from a fantasy perspective, from a competition right down the wire, I want to see some good football the next couple weeks. So go Vikes.
Absolutely. Well, this was a lot of fun. Hopefully we gave people some great advice heading into week 1 of the 2019 fantasy playoff season. So it's very exciting time. Carlos, I see you. Let's go. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, buddy. We have a lot of fun on here.
Absolutely, yeah. Go ahead, click that. It's this way. I always forget that. It's this way. Go ahead, click the subscribe button. Give us a like. We would really appreciate it. We do this every single Monday. We do it every single Sunday before kickoff, and our regular show comes out on Saturday mornings, as you can probably tell with the Saturday morning snap. If you want to get us on social, we are on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at SMS_fantasy, and you can see Scott's handle right underneath him for Twitter. Get in contact with us, and good game. Have a good night to you as well, Carlos. We'll see you guys on Saturday for the regular show.
Have a great night, Mac.
Happy waiver wire. We'll see you guys. Bye, Scotty.
Bye.